Okay, so I wanted to respond to Thomas's video called India Tripolar Dialectic. I do think this is a very interesting way to come at some of the problems of consciousness and to make appeal to Eastern thoughts, distinctions, and to try to get at the way three elements are perhaps needed. This desire to get out of a too simplistic, oppositional, either or kind of thinking. I think I agree with Thomas that there does seem to be, at least in so much of the discussion, a kind of distinction between either rather than talk about materialists and immaterialists. I mean, I think that's a point well taken. I think what you'd want to do is talk about the difference between what could be called materialists and idealists. And there, it's as if the distinction is, mind either comes top down from universal mind, and each person's mind is a subset of the universal mind, or we see sort of bottom up emergent phenomena where cognition and consciousness are taken to be something like epiphenomena from brain states and neurophysiological chemical composition, synaptical firing patterns. I've tried to suggest in many videos here that people need to take more seriously the historical constitution of language, and that language itself, I mean, people go look at latest neurobrain studies on this. What you're going to find is that the problem of locating a word is much, much more difficult than people realize. As we're speaking, if you're literate, your brain, the complex neuronal firing patterns, it's not as if you're going to locate the word somewhere in your brain or in the air. Not only is a word a principle of repetition, and not only is a word a relation, and not only is it a historically overpopulated meaning that surpasses any particular user's intention and it's caught between you and other people, but even in your brain stores literate memories in different places from oral memories, and yet the word is caught within both of those, and so different parts are being activated in different senses. The whole problem of trying to locate the word in either a supernatural space or in a kind of chemical and or neurophysiological space, both of those seem to me problematic. And to that extent, I am very sympathetic to Thomas's attempt to introduce a tripart. For my own contribution to this, I would again strongly recommend that people try to take seriously the work of Josiah Royce. Josiah Royce's book, The Problems of Christianity, and in there this essay called Conception, Perception, and Interpretation, where you would want to be able to make the distinction between perception, that is, the things that come through the senses, the immediate qualities that come through the senses. There is that, and that's always going on. That's the body. That is the body. And then there is conception, where you have types or classes or categories, rather than some empirical you can just look at. There are classes or types or classification schemes by which I can render this percept into a category. I can think of it as a tool, or I can think of it as a pen, or I can think of it as an object. Now, in each one of those cases, there is a filling in of the concept with a particular. So if I say, well, what's an example of an object? I go, well, here's an object. If I say, what's an example of a tool? I go, oh, here's a tool. If I say, what's the example of a pen? I go, oh, here's a pen. In each of those cases, there seems to be, again, a kind of conceptual process whereby we're classifying what's open to immediate perceptual recognition, but then we're also seeing that percept in terms of the concept, right? This is why when Kant says a percept without a concept would be blind, and a concept without a percept would be empty. I'm not sure if I got that right. But anyway, I think we all get the point, right? I mean, you can see what we're talking about here. It's a very direct, simple example. For Royce, the question would be, where do you put your neighbor's mind? Is your neighbor's mind merely something that you perceive? Is it just like a there? Is it just a category? Is it just a type? I think Royce would say no, that your neighbor's mind, or any sign of a mind, or even the words that I've been using, none of the stuff that they were pointing to, the words, and I don't mean the sounds, I mean the language that somehow that you're able to recognize within those sounds, those you're neither perceiving nor simply conceiving, you're interpreting them. You interpret messages in the same way that you interpret signs, and to interpret is to fall into an ongoing triadic relation of communities. Language is historical, it's an ongoing event that weaves together past and present and future. It's the unique temporal sense of order that humans and any interpreting being, I don't want to reduce it to humans, perhaps other creatures out there in the cosmos interpret. To the best of my knowledge, there are rich, complex processes of other animals here on the planet that synthesize concept and percept, but they don't, properly speaking, interpret. To interpret means communities and selves in an ongoing relationship with self-consciously chosen time, with deeds that are chosen and counseled, partly because I can stand in a relationship to my past self and my future self. Why? Because a person is a kind of community. A person, I mean, your own mind. You don't just perceive your mind. You don't just conceive your mind. I mean, your mind is the ongoing synthesis of perceptions and conceptions, and interpretation is the way that someone gets a conscious command over that. I think other creatures, again, they synthesize percept and concept, instantaneously without thinking about it, but they don't have the ability to consciously reconceptualize a percept through the interpretive act. They can't say, hey, this isn't really a pen, this isn't really a tool, this is actually a piece of garbage. And eventually it will be garbage longer than it was a pen. Now, when I start to do that and I start to say, look, this that we've been calling a pen is actually a piece of garbage, then I start to realize that it wasn't just a new way of conceptualizing it, although it was that. It's that with speech and language, I can create communities through actively bringing together particular concepts to particular percepts. It's the unique synthesis by which we learn to get conscious control over how we're going to conceptualize what we perceptually experience. This is what, to me, seems the more interesting question than the sort of nebulous, what is consciousness, where does it come from? It may come from some supermind, I don't know. It may just be emergent, I don't know. But it seems like the one that we want to get at, and notice how those are just words and those are ways of talking. It seems like what we really want to get at is our way of talking about consciousness and the history of language, the history of the terms that we've used to interpret these various kinds of perceptual experiences that we have, and how we create communities and how we separate communities off and how we align in those interpretations. Okay, thanks.